Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour, as you saw in the title, we're going to talk about the Hour of the Robot. But what exactly does that mean? You'll find out in a moment. As always, I want to thank you for tuning in this evening. I would like to invite you, if you have a question for our guest, you can always give us a call at 781-270-9199. You can also email me anytime, day or night, at talk@bcattv.org. Love to get emails, especially if you have a suggestion for a future topic. I want to thank the crew for this evening. Liz Gillespie, Chris Flaherty, and John Villas are here giving up their Wednesday nights. Well, Liz is, the other two work here, to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And I am grateful that they are here. And I want to say that there is no Daddy Date Night tonight because I get Daddy Date Night tonight. My guest is Paul R. McNamee, who, yes, he's daddy, but you are a published author now. Well,
Writer, yeah. I'm not the great American novelist or anything.
yet. Okay. So you are about to, I know I'm going to be asking these questions that seem really, really obvious because I'm married to you, but our audience may not know about them. So before we start digging into your life as a writer, can you take a couple of minutes and let everybody know where you grew up, how you came to the Burlington area, and what made you interested in becoming a creative writer?
Well, not far from the tree. I grew up in Chelmsford. It's a couple towns away. Spent a little time in Arlington. Met somebody.
I wonder who that is.
And we decided to make our life in Burlington after hunting around a few different towns, a few different houses.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, and we're real glad we're here. And have been here for 18, 19 years.
I know. Kind of scary. But I'm glad we're here. And so you're not a full-time writer.
No, I have a day job, as many do.
But you've been creative. You've been kind of interested in writing since before we even met.
Yeah.
You were doing screenwriting for a while, and
yeah, I did. I guess a little bit in high school, college. I tried some short stories, the old-fashioned print them, send them out in a self-addressed stamped envelope to get the rejection back, which I did every time.
Oh.
And well, I wasn't working that hard at it. And yeah, and then kind of picked it up again. Well, I was screenwriting for a while, and then kind of picked back up prose about the aughts, 2000s.
Okay.
And I'd say about 10 years ago, I started getting much steadier, and it's been nothing huge, but a few stories appear every year, if I'm lucky.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, you've been in a lot of anthology. Well, not a lot, but you've been in several anthologies.
I'm coming up on about 18 stories published.
Wow, I've lost
since
track.
About past 10 years. So I'm not the most prolific, but like I said, if you average it out, there's about a story or two every year, hopefully, that appears. And this will be my first novel. So.
Yay! So you mentioned that you had been writing, screenwriting, and then prose. How do you get your mind set on the different styles of writing, whether it's a short story or a screenplay or a novel?
The story kind of tells me what it should be or what format or medium it should be. Sometimes I translate it, sometimes I don't. I mean, the stuff I was doing in screenwriting, I don't think any of it I've ever thought about turning into prose. But
where do you get your ideas for your stories? I'm just thinking,
Well, I guess my friends would say it's more that it's sitting down and executing on the idea is really the trick.
Okay.
And it's like, to me, it's a muscle that if the more you use it, the easier it gets to come up with new ideas.
See, I would think just the opposite. It's like, oh, poof, my brain is empty now. I've dumped out all my story ideas.
Yeah, actually, it's not that. When you first get at least for me, when I first sat down to write, like you guard your idea because it's like your idea, and it's not that that's not a bad idea to do, but and you don't want to take it or use it, and then because you don't have anything else. But then they start coming. I mean, some people, it's what they see, it's what they hear, news articles. You know, I'm not really sure. Some of the things I know, I was just some of the things I've written, I kind of know. I kind of want to try this, put two things together, or.
Okay.
So yeah, they're there. I can't really tell you where they come from. Just they pop up.
They just show up. Well,
And
that's
if you're,
pretty
if
cool.
you're lucky, you get more and more as you go along.
Now, I know you love to read because
Yeah.
you can tell by, our
Deep piles of books in our office.
that's got something to do with it. But what styles or what genres of reading do you like, and how does that tie in, or does it relate to what you like to write about?
I like a lot of genres. I've kind of moved through different ones. For a while, it was like sword and sorcery, low fantasy, and then I got in with the horror community, and I was reading quite a bit of horror, and then now kind of shifted into what's called the new pulp movement, which is, it's sort of like saying animation. It's not. It's new pulp covers a lot of genres. There's westerns, there's mysteries, there's fantasy, heroes like Doc Savage and stuff like that. But I would say the emphasis there is that they're all action adventure, regardless of what genre you're going in. So it's to keep the plot going, keep it action oriented, and that's actually sort of what I'm gearing to. That's what my novel, I call it a pulp novel. So that's kind of what I gear towards now. Still like to keep my fingers in horror because I still, I still have a lot of friends in the horror writing community.
You want to freak your wife out?
I don't go for extreme stuff though. So, but
So where'd you get the idea for Hour of the Robot?
So that's actually a direct. That was a what if idea, which
Really?
came to me.
Okay.
Where, if anyone in the audience knows about the recent history of the DC animation, where they did the Batman animated series, and
Okay.
they did Superman animated, Batman Beyond, Justice League. And of course, I love Justice League. Justice League finally got me into superheroes as a grown adult. Before
I remember
before
going to
I kinda
Target once, getting like the DVD,
Yeah.
and it was like pre-kid, and the cashier is like, "Oh, you got all of these superhero stuff. How old's your kid?" They're from my husband.
Yeah.
Oh.
So when those series ended, a lot of people don't know. They talk about the Marvel action movies, which are great, and the DC movies haven't really got off the ground. But the opposite of that is that DC has been doing amazing animation all along since Justice League ended, and they've been doing direct-to-video releases.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the first one of those was called Superman Doomsday, and it was based on the Doomsday Superman comic, where Superman died. And
Wasn't there a movie where Superman died? Was it the
Few of them.
same? Oh.
so,
okay.
but anyway, in this movie, there's a robot that I really liked, just a
Oh.
character animation, and he's basically, his name's Kellex. He's in the, although in that movie they never named him. He's in the Fortress of Solitude, and he basically brings Superman back. But I came up with this idea. Well, what if Superman really was dead? What would that robot have done?
Oh, okay.
Of course, I can't do DC because it's trademarked and copyrighted. So I
Okay.
made my own superhero skew on the idea, and just
Okay.
explored. Okay, there's a alien superhero, and he has this robot, and now the robot has to step out because the alien has gotten into trouble. I realize I gave away too much on the back of the book, but
Okay.
that's how the idea started. It's what if that robot really had to step out and be a superhero itself.
Now, that kind of leads me to my next question. You got the idea, and it transitioned from something that you had seen. How do you know when you're writing that you're not accidentally
Plagiarizing.
plagiarizing? Sometimes you don't do, you don't do it intentionally, but
No, I mean that's. I
would
think as
editors
long as your
catch
intentions are
this?
good and you're not intentionally plagiarizing anything, you're okay. Because the whole, our friend Charles Rutledge will tell you, write like you. That's sort of I wouldn't say it's a secret, but a lot of authors who are supportive and stuff, they'll tell you, you'll just say, oh, but this has been done, but you haven't done it.
Okay.
So that's really, it's putting your stamp on it and, doing your, and that's, if you're strong enough in that or confident enough in that, you really shouldn't have to worry about, accidentally borrowing
Okay.
things. You're putting spins on things, but you're not,
Because I'm saying
you're
you
not
read,
word for word plagiarizing
you
them.
read so much that you're
Yeah.
bound to come up with an idea that may have been used before. So
It's funny with that, I find, anyway, and again, I'm new at this compared to some of my friends, that there's different ways. I used to, I kind of go back and forth. I used to be if I'm writing this genre, I stay away from it while I'm writing it.
oh, okay.
I'll read other things. If I'm writing a superhero story, I will read horror. If I'm writing horror, I will read action and adventure. But again, my friend Charles he immerses himself. If he's writing a vampire story, all he's reading is vampire stuff. All he's watching is vampire stuff.
Wow.
And but I know he's going to do his story, his style, and it's not going to be, oh, we read this before, he ripped this off. It's So it depends what works for you. A lot of writing is just what works for you. There's
Okay. A lot of experimentation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of how-to books and lectures and whatever. You could have a library of that alone. You probably shouldn't. Read 2 or 3, take what you need, take what works for you.
Right.
So I'm still trying to find exactly what works for me and how and when, but I'm getting there, I hope.
Yeah, having the cats wake you up at 4 a.m. is not helping.
Yeah.
But speaking of Charles, networking seems to, at least from my perspective, looking at your writing career, it seems like the more you network, the more creative you get, or the more involved you become. Can you talk a little bit more about the different networking opportunities that you've taken advantage of?
Yeah, so the networking,
Or how do you network?
it's kind of, because it's a creative community, it's not, you shouldn't ever network just to network. Like, don't go in there saying, I'm going to meet people just so I can pitch my book.
Yeah, no.
It's more you meet people, you're like-minded. I call it talking shop. That's why I like to get out with my writer friends, because you're talking about stuff that you can talk about, plotting and this and what'd you read and how's that writing coming and what's your next story about, what's your current story about. And so it's sort of, it just, it's encouraging, it's inspiring to do it that way. And then you start to get to know people, and if an opportunity arises, it's, and it's not even, it's not always just, so I can get my book to somebody. Sometimes it's just, well, you join a group of writers, and there's a Facebook group for open calls, and they list, open horror markets, and you're like, I have a story, and oh, there's an opening at this magazine, there's an opening for this anthology. A lot of it's online, which is good. I like to meet people in person too, but in this day and age, it's great that it can be online. I know writers across the country.
Now, are your writer friends all the same genre that you are? Or, because like talking shop, not really sure how you do that if, you're writing, or somebody's writing fantasy fiction and somebody's writing horror.
Well, it's still writing, though. There's still nuts and bolts.
Okay.
Act structures, characters, realism. Yeah, like I said, I have a lot of horror friends because I go to this yearly convention. We can get to that, but
We could talk about it now. Go back later.
And but now, like I said, I've moved into. I'm also involved in the New Pulp, and there's a lot of fine people there too.
How do you find these groups? The internet's a really big place, and it's like,
I don't really. again, it's more, at this point for me, it's more contacts. Like especially, I mean, silly old social media, which is, good and bad. But, I have friends and, someone will hit me with a friend request and I'll check and it'll be, oh, we have all these mutual writer friends. What do they write? Sometimes I'll hook up, or it's just groups on Facebook. Although you have to be careful because sometimes they get out of control with,
Well, yeah, that's kind of.
they can be negative or whatever. So now it's just sort of like, I know people I trust, and if they know people they trust, then, I open up a little more and a little more.
Regarding that manuscript, no.
So, yeah, and then that's like the online world. In the real world, there are conferences and conventions, and the one I stumbled on is called NECON. It's not neoconservative, it's NECON, New England Horror Writers Conference, although they've dropped the word horror from it, so now it's more a general writers conference, although the tracks and the panels and the discussions still focus on horror.
Okay.
But that used to be in Rhode Island, historically. It moved, before I joined, it used to be at the Roger Williams University, I think in Bristol, Rhode Island.
Okay.
It moved down to Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and that's when I got on board. And then they were going to move it to Salem, Mass.
And then COVID.
Then COVID hit, and then they moved it to UMass Lowell. And then we didn't know we'd come out of this quite as well as we did, so it's not happening this year either.
Okay.
But they are having a virtual convention using tech out of ULowell.
Okay.
And I'm still calling it ULowell. I went to ULowell. I know it's UMass Lowell now. I'm sorry.
It could still be ULowell.
And if anyone's interested in that, it's only $25 as opposed to $100 if you actually went in person. So $25 to get a taste of it. There might still be time to join up for this year in July.
So is it like necon.com?
Camp, because everybody has fun. They call it camp. So it's campnecon.com.
Oh, okay.
And
guess I should have had that as a graphic.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
Chris.
So you could add it to the show notes maybe. And this year they're going to do virtual. So we'll see how that works out. Should be exciting. It's not quite like this being there with real people.
Now, weren't you invited to do a panel either
Saturday morning?
Pre-COVID
I'm on one of the panels about, I think, fantasy meets horror.
Oh.
The intersection of the two.
Okay. Have you actually written where fantasy meets horror, or?
Well, tune into the panel and find out. No, I mean, I consider I and many of my writer friends consider like sword and sorcery, like Conan the Barbarian, low fantasy where it's not the big epic stuff like Lord of the Rings. It's more personalized. But anyway, a lot of that, if you go back to it, it has its roots in horror. There's always a very scary monster or something going on, or black magic or something. A lot of real, what I consider good sword and sorcery, probably has a horror element in it.
Okay. Well, you need that little plot twist every now and then.
Yep. So.
Like our son always gets upset if something sad happens in the movie. It's like, well, dude, you got to have something happen so you can turn, there needs to be. But going back to coming up with ideas, how do you know when you first get an idea for a story that it would be a good story? And that it's worth kind of mapping it out?
Usually the mapping it out will tell you if it's worth continuing. Or just, I call it test drive sometimes.
Okay.
Because there's there's two thoughts. One is, wing it, pants it, seat of your pants, just write it. And there's people who outline. And you could either start your outline and say this is going to work, or you could take a test drive, wing it for a few pages, and see if you think it's going to go somewhere.
Then you might encounter continuity errors. Because there's always somebody that goes through the story and say, well, that can't happen because of this.
Yeah, well.
Have you ever gotten caught trying to fix continuity errors in your...
Well, I haven't gone, the only, the novel coming was a bigger that I was actually glad I'd hired an editor who had an eye to that kind of thing, because I'd
Okay.
only done short stories. Really, I don't think you can. I'm sure you could get lost, but it's not like, if you do a color in the beginning of a book and you change it by the end of the book, but in a short story you're going to see, oh, I shouldn't have done that with that.
Okay. So in the process, so you had this idea, you wrote the story, which was long enough to be a novel, and I want to go into what the criteria are for novels. There's an editor and a publisher, and who are all the players after you write a
For
story?
the writer. So after you're done in the vacuum of writing,
Yeah, okay.
which yes, it's not a vacuum when you're done. So I don't actually know if, I think at some point when you're, what do you say, established, if you send something to a publisher, they will put an editor on it.
Okay.
In my case, it's my first novel. Like I said, I think I'm up to 17 or 18 published stories now, but I wrote a couple novels that I trunked, which I guess today we should call hard disked. All right, throw it in the trunk for
Okay.
hard disk. No one else is going to see it. I just didn't think they were up to par. But then I got this idea and I really loved it and I worked with it. And when I was done, I was very happy with what I had finished. And I wasn't sure if I would end up self-publishing it, because its length. It's not a super long novel. It's technically a novel,
Okay.
but nowadays many big publishers have crazy limits on.
They want like War and Peace novels.
They want 80,000 words.
Wow.
If you're unagented and they don't know you, and at least that was the shortest I found.
Wow.
So I wasn't sure, just on that alone, I wasn't sure where it would wind up. So I allowed myself to spend the money, which sometimes you have to do, to hire an editor that I had met at Nikon,
Okay.
Amelia Bennett. She was great. And she had done, it's sort of like developmental. It's not just the grammar. She will go through the grammar, but then she will take notes and give you a Bible and look for continuity errors
Okay.
and questions. And sometimes when you're a writer, it's in your head and you're not getting on the page, and the reader
Okay.
is saying, "What?"
Yeah, okay.
So I figured that was a win-win. Either I would self-publish it and it would have been professionally edited, or I would have a professionally edited manuscript to go shop around.
Oh, okay.
So again, through some contacts, someone reminded me that the publisher of the novel, Crossroad Press, again, I was sort of in a horror frame of mind because I talk to these people at Nikon, and someone said, "Oh no, they do more than horror now." So I was able to make some contacts there and send them my manuscript, and they accepted it. So
Cool.
yeah, I think they're a very interesting publisher. They're small press, but they started out as an ebook platform only, working with horror writers' backlists.
Okay.
And then they moved up to doing audiobooks, and in some cases they, like for instance, they won't have the rights to the print, but they do have the rights to the audio. So the book might come out from Tor, but the
Okay.
audio they do. Or the book will come out from a smaller press and they'll do the audio. So and then eventually they started, doing print books as well. So Hour the Robot is actually technically under their Mystique imprint, which is actually their young adult imprint.
Oh, okay.
'Cause I didn't write it for young adults, but I did keep it clean. It was a superhero story, and I wasn't going the Watchmen way. I was going the Justice League way, which is what the influence
Fair
was.
enough. Okay.
So, and I also, again, when I wrote it, that was one of the conscious decisions I made, was keep it clean, and I could have options like going to a young adult
Okay.
press. So,
So who decides? Well, okay, let's backing up a little bit. You knew this publishing house through your connections at Nikon. Had you not had, you mentioned shopping for a publisher. Is that like you do the research saying this publisher,
well, at this point I do, because I don't have an agent. I'm
or
not
do you
that
just
big.
like
So-
start sending out your manuscript saying,
Well, usually it's I haven't done it yet. This is my first novel, and I got lucky. Query letters. You can send off
okay.
little query. There's definitely like people who can teach you or stuff online how to write a query letter and
Okay.
where to send it, and it's sort of things like just it's a little bit of homework. Hey, you like reading that? Who's publishing it? What are they up to? And
Okay.
look them up, or get names. Just ask people who are writing, who their publishers are or who they know. Resource if you want to spend the money, subscribe to a Publishers Weekly or what was the old one? Publishers Market. There used to be this big book that came out every year. I think there's still some online equivalent of that, and you can just look up and see what the genres are. I feel it's probably better if, like I said, if you like something and you read it and you like, find out who that publisher is and find out the contact information.
Okay.
If you can.
Now, is that normally what an agent would do?
I don't know how agents work because I don't have one.
Okay. No, I'm just.
No, but they would do that. But another thing with agents that, back from screenwriting, and I will grant you that screenwriting agents might be different. I remember what one of the lessons from that was.
Yeah, I'm not letting you get.
One of the lessons from that was, remember that a lot of people think the agent goes out and gets you the sales, and sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's just, again, it's like you're talking to people, you're at conventions, and an opportunity opens. The agent is really also there to make sure you get everything on the back end.
Okay.
You get your money, you get your foreign rights if they're a good agent. So it's not always necessarily the agent is going to make your sales. Sometimes you're still doing that yourself. Just like
look out for you.
Just like I know some professional writers who they still do a heck of a lot of their own promotion.
Okay.
They don't rely on the big publisher to do all the promotion anymore either. So you could definitely have an agent or whatever, but you got to do work too and keep your eyes open, your ears open yourself.
Now, when it comes to legal stuff, you have a contract to sign. I know you personally don't have a lawyer looking it over, but are lawyers generally involved, like at some point, or is it just like publisher versus?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if I don't see. I mean, I know.
Because every time contracts are involved,
I know friends with
real
real agents, and I don't really hear them mentioning lawyers.
Okay.
So I think you get to the point where you should know what your contract is.
Okay.
I suppose as you step up through the publishing game, they get more complicated. But you should be able to.
Because like movie rights, and if
Yeah,
they turn
don't
Hour of
sign
the Robot into a
don't
comic
sign anything
book
away. Watch what the terms. Don't sign anything in perpetual. Make sure everything has a return to you in a year or 3 years or whatever it's going to be.
Okay. So is this also some stuff that you learn like at the conventions?
Yeah.
Through other writer friends and.
Yeah. So yeah, and I mean this is sort of a small contract, but it's the same idea. It was they have rights for so long, and then and then after that you could take the rights back, or they'll offer it every year, and you can just let them keep it. But don't ever just say, yeah, you can have this thing forever. Don't ever do that.
Take it.
You should get paid for what you do.
Exactly. Now, you had mentioned promotion. Do we want to talk a little bit about promotion now?
Yeah,
marketing.
Be prepared to promote your stuff, which I'm starting to do for them. That's why I'm here. And only because, again, I have friends who actually are with what you think of the big publishers, and not that the publishers aren't promoting, but the writers are doing just as much promotion. I know someone who had a pretty big book come out earlier this year, and he was, because of the pandemic, he couldn't make in-person appearances, so he was pretty much, literally, he Zoomed every night, different panels and different talks.
Wow.
With different people. I think pretty much Monday, Tuesday, the whole Monday through Friday the book came out, he was on every night talking with people.
Wow.
Of course, social media you promote on, a blog. So in that, I mean, everyone will tell you it doesn't matter if you're people think, well, if you're self-published, you're going to do all this work yourself.
Even if you're not, you still have to do it. Yeah.
So either way, be prepared. And then a lot of people are, well, I'm a writer, I'm shy, I get that, but the fact is you got to step out when the time
Right.
comes. So
Got to reach out of that comfort zone once in a while.
yeah. Now that the pandemic's winding down, at least it's winding down in Massachusetts.
We hope.
Hopefully people can do more in-person appearances. I can't say yet because I haven't agreed, but hopefully my book, so I don't have my book physically with me because it's on pre-order. It's coming out July 6th. I had originally envisioned it would be a soft release, and it would things seem to have accelerated with the opening of the state. However, plans are already in place, so
Okay.
I was still thinking, well, maybe by fall I'd be able to make some in-person appearances, book signings, talks.
That'd be cool.
So I might have an opportunity to actually pop up in town somewhere in August.
Hopefully.
I'm not going to say where yet. And maybe that'll be a start of actually me hawking my book in person.
So for Christmas, everybody's getting a cut. No. So let's go back to, we'll touch upon promotion and, how to order the book a little bit later. But when you first get everything out on paper or nowadays on the laptop,
Yeah.
and you go and you revise it, and you had also said some of your stories you've trunked or hard drived. I think that's what you said.
Yep.
How often, or do you ever go back to those and kind of rework, either just tweak it or say, I like this element, I'm going to try something different with that? I mean, does that ever happen?
Not with my novels. With short stories, another thing with this publishing writing world is that a lot comes down to personal preferences and tastes.
Okay.
So you can write a perfectly good story and send it somewhere and they can reject it, and there can be absolutely nothing wrong with your story. It's just not the right spot for it.
Okay.
So I think maybe 2 years ago I had 4 stories published, and every single one of them had been rejected before.
Okay.
And only one of them did I actually do a rewrite. I stuck a little more action in the middle of it.
Okay.
So that's just sort of perseverance, and I think there's also a point where you have to, cut your losses and say, okay, I get it. Personally for me, it's about say 3 to 5 tries. If I can't get
Okay.
something sold in the short story market after 3 or 4, then it's sort of like, well, maybe this story just isn't that wow.
Well, I'm even thinking like earlier, like you get something down and you might not like it.
Yeah.
Or you might just reach saturation and say, okay, look, I can't stare at this any longer. I've been working on it for way too long. And you just kind of put it aside and then kind of bring it back and say, oh, okay, this really wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and kind of finish it up.
I don't consciously do that because, again, I'm trying to keep the ideas
Okay.
generating. I'd hate to keep just going back and going back. So, no, I really don't. If I feel like a story wasn't firing, then I'll take a few tries at making it fire, but eventually I'll just be like, okay, it's not going where it needs to go.
Not going to work. You've passed the outline stage.
And if
but
you got to the point where you generate lots of ideas, you don't worry about it so much. That it's like, oh, that's the only idea I have. What am I going to do?
That'd be me. So you mentioned, we've been talking about short stories and novels and screen. What is there like an exact definition of what constitutes a short story, and when does the short story transition into a novel? Is it just word count, or?
Yeah, technically it's word count.
Okay, what are like the parameters? Ballpark.
The classic, as I recall, the classic numbers are short story Well, now there's people call the novelette, and some people don't like that at all. Either it's a short story or it's a novella. I believe the short story, if you're not doing a novelette term, if I recall, the short story goes up to 17,000 words.
Okay.
And then from 17 to, it must be 35, 39 is a novella.
Okay.
Technically, 40,000 words is a novel, and that is still the official guidelines that I've seen. However,
Some publishers.
that is a very short novel by today's standards.
Okay.
So, Hour of the Robot is 56,000 words, which is also a little short, but it's more than 50. And 50 was sort of a breaking point for some online sites and book hosting sites. So,
without having to put very, 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 very good
I
story.
honestly, I would have to look up. You can Google pretty quick and say like what novelette, novella. I forget what the novelette range is. Somewhere in the teens.
But a short story would be like something you read in a magazine or
an anthology.
Anthology. Okay.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of anthologies and a couple of magazines. So.
Okay. And where might you find a novella? Also in an anthology, or?
Yeah, it could be in an anthology. It could be in a magazine. Depends on what the magazine does.
Okay. And novels are pretty much freestanding.
Yeah, and a lot of people like the novella length, especially when you're dealing with, like I was saying, pulp, action, adventure, sword and sorcery, horror, because it's, there's an intensity you need to maintain, and to maintain it for 100,000 words is, and they keep talking about this great resurgence in the novellas because of ebooks, because you wouldn't just print a novella, you would put it in an anthology, you put it in a magazine.
Okay.
But now, with the e-format, you figure it could be any length you want. Who cares? And they keep talking about the resurgence of the novella, and but I haven't really seen it yet. I mean, maybe it's out there. Maybe I'm not looking well enough. But I think even now, right now, I think Amazon just announced some sort of a novella program for writers.
Oh, wow. They're getting into publishing.
Well, I mean, they have been. I mean, Kindle.
That's how they
Amazon.
started, didn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know how that's any different than their ebook platform, the Kindle platform.
Okay.
So maybe it's a price point or something, I don't know. But so there is, and small press, specialty press, like collectibles will sometimes print a novella, but it's a lot of overhead to print something, just, a short novella.
Oh, okay.
So.
Got it. Now, your son wanted me to ask the next question.
Okay.
Where did you get the idea for Hour of the Robot?
I just told you.
Yes, you did.
The DC animated movie.
You did. And he wanted you to tell us a little bit more about the plot, which I think you kind of did.
Okay, so in the...
Without giving too much away.
Yeah, that's a mistake. I won't make that mistake again. I gave a little too much about in the back cover. So in the near future city of Pallas,
okay.
Pallas, there's the alien superhero and his robot, and they stumble on an arms smuggling operation.
Okay.
And in another city called Crowsport, there is the Protector and his sidekick, the Understudy, and they're investigating some gangsters, and there's a connection. Okay. And when
do we find out what that connection is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when the two join forces, something goes south or bad, and the robot has to step up and become a superhero / pulp hero. I've been calling this a pulp superhero novel because the only real superpowered superhero is the alien superhero.
Oh, okay.
The others are sort of pulpy, sort of Batman.
Okay.
Yeah. So the robot has to step up and become a crime fighter, if you will. But there's something perhaps even darker and more dangerous going on behind everything.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So now we have to wait for the movie to come out.
You'll have to wait for the movie. Everybody else can read the book.
You know me so well. Okay, a lot of these questions that we kind of already covered. But speaking of cover, artwork. How does one normally, if there is a normal, how did you determine what the artwork was going to look like? Did you kind of talk to the publisher and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking? Or did they come up with the idea? Or how did you figure out?
So in my case, because I was new to this publisher and it's my first novel, I didn't put too much. I would love to have had a friend who was pretty good at drawing do it, but I worked with the publisher. They do their own covers. They sort of pull stuff together. I did come up with the concept of the skyline and the robots sort of looming, but now I realize I hope people don't think it's a kaiju movie. It's supposed to sort of be, the cityscape and the superhero, but it's a robot. So
Okay.
yeah, it's not a kaiju. He's not a giant robot. He's a
Chris,
humanoid
can
man.
you put the
Yeah.
graphic up for us so we could take a quick look at
So
the cover?
right. So
It does look like a giant robot,
yeah,
but he's really not.
no. So
It's still really cool.
yeah. I mean, hopefully, if there's a sequel, I'll actually have like human faces, and then you'll understand that it's. So I described that, and he sent me some stuff, and I found the skyline, and a very tiny robot, which he was able to, because they can scale them without
okay.
losing image quality.
Okay.
So that's what we came up with,
That's pretty cool.
and yeah.
It's also nice having Paul R. McNamee, because there are other Paul McNamees.
You would think Paul McNamee is unique enough. However, since I was a child, I've known of the Australian tennis player Paul McNamee.
Okay.
Because my older brother and sisters played tennis when he was semi-famous in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
So, Paul McNamee, the Australian tennis player, has written a book.
Oh, he has? Okay.
Yes, if you Amazon Paul McNamee, his tennis book will come up. So that's why.
So we got to be different.
I would like to be Paul R. McNamee, plus R stands for, it's my father's name also. So just as a little tribute to him, I want to have that there. So yeah, sometimes it gets, I was on Goodreads as Paul McNamee, and then I'm publishing as Paul R. McNamee. It took quite a few emails and requests to get everything lined up. It's lined up well now.
Yay!
But yeah, sometimes because not every.
Yeah, because we don't need two of you.
Personally, I don't go around saying I'm Paul R. McNamee. It's just my pen name. So like my blog is just Paul McNamee. But yes, the written stuff is Paul R.
Cool. So we talked a little bit. It is a superhero book. Everybody loves robots. They're cool. Who decides, if anyone, if the novel would translate well into a comic book or translate well into a movie?
I guess I would.
I'm just wondering how that whole process works.
Yeah.
Because even if you think it's a great idea, how does it?
Well, I hadn't written a comic book before, so I could have taken the exercise. I took a workshop on that, but it would take me a long time. As long as it took to finally write my first book, it was probably faster than if I tried to script out a comic book and then find an artist and then figure out what we could do together. That's a world I don't even know. You talk about bringing your book to people. I'm like, I don't know where you start with comics. So do you just know you're going to be independent and find an artist to work with, or you talk to somebody at Dark Horse or something? I don't know. I would have no idea.
So it's like a totally different.
Yeah, I mean,
realm.
obviously, I do think this would translate to a comic. I mean, it started Slife as a novel, and then I got an opportunity while I was working on it to submit a pulp serial, and it got accepted, and I cranked it out. But then that
didn't quite work out.
That situation didn't work out. It's fine. I took it back, and I polished it up as a novel. So so it's episodic, it's action driven. It could be adapted, but and spend the time on adapting it unless I'm really into it, or I know I can get it worked. I'd probably just rather write the prose sequel, let somebody come to me and say, hey, I'd like to turn that into then I will sit down and make a comic script for it.
Okay, cool. So do you have plans for a sequel with this?
I do. I have a couple. I think it sets itself up nicely as a trilogy.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Or, I mean, an on-running series. I could expand, the legion of heroes that it has. I had a pretty complicated idea for the second one, and I realized I still want people to be able to pick up the book and read it independently.
Okay.
So I still will do this. It was going to be sort of a time travel, timeline altering. But I realized that if you go to the second book and you haven't read the first book, then if there's weird changes, they're not going to be weird to you because you're not going to understand the impact.
Okay.
So I'm actually going with a simpler, more direct story for the second.
Time travel always messes things up.
So I sort of backed up, and I'm going to try to pants this, write something a bit more direct, seat of my pants.
Okay.
Just to sort of establish the world a little better. Or not better, but more, and then maybe I'll do the bigger sort of world-changing story for the third novel.
Okay. Now, with the sequel, when it happens, would you still go through the same process where having the editor look at it first, or because you're now a known entity to the publisher, just say, hey, publisher, I have a sequel?
In this case, I think I still would, although it does cost money, but if you're self-publishing and you really want to make a splash self-publishing, you pay for good cover art, you pay for good editing. I didn't sell it on the point, but the fact that I had it edited took a lot of weight off of the publisher, because it's a small publisher and it's actually two people.
Okay.
And they pull in. I don't want to get too much behind the scenes, but they had someone also do
oh,
do
cool,
an editing
you already
pass.
did this.
Yeah, they still had someone edit it, but it was much quicker and easier because I had it done before.
Okay.
So if I was to place the sequel with them, just to be clear, I only signed a one-book deal. I didn't sign up for a.
Does that happen sometimes where they read a book and they're like, hey, we want a sequel?
Yeah, sometimes. I don't think it's quite. I'm quite there, or they're quite there in this instance. But for them, I would probably say, yeah, I'll have my editor, who I hired. It's not mine. She's not mine. I'd probably have her.
But she knows
edit.
your work, so.
Right, and it was a challenge for her because again, I met her at Nikon, which is horror oriented, and she liked the opportunity to do something that wasn't horror. So yeah, I'd probably pay to have it edited again on my own and then bring it to them.
Now, are the rules for horror versus pulp fiction versus sword and sorcery, are the steps that you need to take to publishing pretty much the same?
Yeah, that's all the same. The genre doesn't matter. It's still going to be writing and talking to people and connecting with people and editing and.
So we still have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
But I want to know more about, you said the book's coming out July 6th.
Yeah.
And it's available on Amazon?
So it was an ebook. I would say lots of ebook options. You can order on Amazon. You can order it for Barnes and Noble. What's that? You can Nook. You can order on Google Play, Kobo.
Never heard of Kobo.
Yeah, well, I like Kobo because if you go to the page, it'll not only tell you the page count, it tells you the word count. And what one thing as a writer I find fascinating is that I will have other writers ask me, how many pages did you write? And I'm like, pages don't mean anything to me because I'm double spaced and I'm doing a font, and when it gets to paperback, it's going to be a different size, and when I get to hardcover, if I get to hard, it's going to be, and if it's an ebook, it's going to be different. So I just say what my word counts are.
Okay.
So of all the sites, it's kind of funny. If you go to Kobo and you look up the book, it will tell you the page count and it will tell you the word count, which is kind of nice because then I can say, oh, now I know, like,
You can translate.
yeah, I'm like, I know somebody wrote this book. How big is that book? Don't give me a page count. How big is is it oh, that's 100,000 word novel. Okay, now I have some idea. I read it. I have some idea of what that means.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, Kobo's one of them. And then that's all the ebook. I do not know if they'll do an audiobook, but print I is definitely from Amazon. You can get a print edition.
Okay. So like
and I was surprised. I didn't know this happened, but Barnes & Noble does list a print edition.
Oh, cool.
Which is nice. Doesn't mean you're going to find it at the store, but Barnes & Noble online, you can get print if you... I know there's some anti-Amazon sentiment in the world, and if you prefer to get print from Barnes & Noble, it appears to be an option. I haven't done it myself. I hope it works.
Well, we'll let you know on July 6th.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing us writers had seen that earlier, maybe only a month or two ago, there was an article that Barnes & Noble was considering letting each store independently figure out what they wanted to order.
Wow.
Rather than a corporate down.
Okay.
And they were saying that could be really good, especially for like local authors. And hey, I'm in Burlington.
Yeah.
There's a Barnes & Noble in Burlington.
Right.
And not only that, I'm on your online catalog. So maybe you'll see it in the Burlington store. I don't know.
Well, if that rumor happens to be true.
Yeah.
Because also
they have to roll it out too. It's not just
right.
instant.
But also, local managers and local stores tend to know their audience a little better than
I think it would be nice if something like, especially if they want to compete with Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I mean, I think there's still Books A Million in the country, but around here, Books A Million hasn't come up. They went around us and went to Maine. I know there's one in Portland.
Okay.
But anyway, if they want to compete, I mean, one thing they could do is, do the local author angle.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of the independent bookstores will do, or even your town libraries will do, right? They'll have a night with your local author.
That's true.
So just having a little local author section in your Barnes & Noble, who knows?
So we pretty much covered all my questions, but...
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. But I have another question that I'm just going to throw at you that you're going to probably hate me for. If you had to start this process all over again, knowing what you know now, how would you have gone about navigating through the whole writing thing?
Like what do you tell my college age self to not stop?
I don't know. It's like, would you still have gone through the,
I mean, the hindsight. The only hindsights is always I always seem to come to stuff late in my life. I don't know why. I mean, I wish I had somehow discovered Nikon earlier, but then again, I wasn't that into horror earlier. So life.
You also did the screenwriting a lot too.
Yeah, and that was sort of that was good exercise for structure, like learning 3x structure and.
What's 3x structure?
No, like every movie you watch is 3x. There's a turning point, and then bigger turning point, and then the climax.
Okay. So like the plot twist. No.
Yes, I mean one thing my screenwriting mentor taught me is like when you're having trouble with like the story, fall back on the structure.
Oh. Okay.
And I still do that with prose writing. Plus, if you write your book like 3 acts, then if filmmakers come shopping.
Oh, I thought you said 3x, not 3 acts.
Oh,
okay, that makes a whole lot more sense.
So, I mean, the only thing, and I'm still having this, like we talked about, joke about the cats waking me up early. It's trying to get a daily writing habit is really important, and even I am still working on it. So,
So it's kind of like anything that you do in your life. If you want, exercising your body, you get up to go to the gym, you're exercising your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with that is I think I was getting hung up on like daily word count, and now it's just, it's not even, don't worry about the word count every day. Just make sure you're sitting in the chair for an hour or whatever time you want writing. And maybe one day it's 300 words, and maybe one day you're on a streak and it's 1,000 words, but just the daily habit I mean, we all get into bad daily habits, right? So why not find some good ones?
Well, I'm also thinking, like, it always fascinated me when you'd say, okay, I'm going to go write.
Yeah.
And I just picture myself, there are some days where I just sit in front of the computer and stare at it, because how do you make your brain be creative?
Well, the staring happens.
Okay.
But I mean, again, I have some friends who are, you would think they are full-time professional writers, and they are, and they also have day jobs.
Wow.
Because they need insurance. Or I have friends who, they are professional writers, and they'll tell you it's a, Tom Sinofsky is one. He's like, it's a job. He said, I treat it as a job. It's the only way. He gets up in the morning and you go to the office 9 to 5. He writes from 9 to 5.
Wow.
He takes his lunch break. And as far as for me, like I said, falling back on structure, if I'm staring at the screen, I'm like, okay, well, structurally, what has to happen next? And that can happen, one thing with Hour of the Robot, and I hope it's still in each chapter, because I was trying to get it done for a pulp serial. I try to have like action. I try to have a cliffhanger.
I hate
So
cliffhangers.
some of those things, well, they pull you through the narrative, right?
Right, okay.
So, if I'm just like, I don't know what has to happen here, it's like, well, you want to end it with a mystery or a cliffhanger. So how do I get from where I am to that point for the day or whatever? So.
Any other comments, suggestions, thoughts?
How much time do we have to
Gonna
kill?
do a book signing? We have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I need to, again, talk to friends, consult with some writer friends, but I know during this pandemic, friends had books come out, and they offered a way to buy a signed copy from them directly. So I might be offering that, but I haven't done the homework on that yet. But just, so if I can't be in person, find a way to order it from me and I can sign it.
Or an author friend of mine that turns out to know one of your author friends, she just had like little, like clear stickers that she would sign and
Right, and he
sent
put it
it
in
to
the
you
book.
and put it in the book.
Yeah, a friend of mine did that too. We went to his, it was supposed to be a book launch. Something messed up and the books weren't there, so he read a passage, and then he signed the sticker, and then they shipped us the book like a week later, and you slap the sticker in, you had a signed book.
Well, that's pretty cool.
So maybe I'll do something like that.
All right. Well, we are
Thank you.
just about out of time. Well, thank you. Yes, even though you're in the same house as me, I usually don't ask you about writing. So, as your brother-in-law said, I think he was like episode 15, it's nice to actually talk about something that I like uninterrupted for an hour to people who actually want to hear. So, thank you. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
I'm getting my months confused lately.
July
July 6th.
Hour of the Robot.
And then Hour of the Robot, available on Amazon, available on Barnes & Noble, available on all those other ebooks that you talked about.
Yes, if you go to I've been promoting it, so if you go to my web blog page, I think one of my last entries has the list of links. I also went in yesterday, and I did not like the graphic, but I added a link to my Twitter, so you can find me there. I am on Facebook, but that's...
You don't have your own professional Facebook. So.
Right, it's not my professional author page, Facebook, and it's not quite private, but...
So go to the Blogspot.
Blogspot and Twitter are fine
Okay,
if you want to
cool.
talk to me.
So thank you. And I
Thank
want to
you.
thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. I hope you are looking forward to the Hour of the Robot and find out what that robot has to do to solve the mystery. And I hope you also enjoy this beautiful weather, enjoy the summer, and I will see you around town. Good night.